In Generation 1, Psychic types dominate most famously. Only they themselves resist Psychic, they're fast, powerful, bulky, have status and recovery, all that good stuff. However, the best Pokemon in Red, Blue, Yellow OU is not Psychic type. In fact, the 3 best Pokemon in RBY are not Psychics at all. They're all normal type. The similarities between the 3 largely begin and end there. Well, beyond their lack of weaknesses, since the fighting type isn't common in RBY OU just because they're destroyed by Psychics. The normals are each unique in what they bring to the team. They're so unique and so essential and so great at what they do that they are required on every single competitive RBY team. Technically, some really aggressive teams can drop Chansey, but that's incredibly rare, and really only something the best of the best can pull off. Dropping Tauros or Snorlax in a serious game, on the other hand, forget about it. They are so good because it doesn't matter that you know they're coming. They're gonna put in work anyway. Realistically though, all of Chansey, Snorlax, and Tauros are gonna be seen on both sides in every single game of RBY OU. Before we dive into why, make sure you leave a like and also subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. I'm over to 300k. I upload these educational talking type videos 3 to 4 times a month, and I upload competitive Pokemon every single day. Tauros is the single biggest threat and overall best Pokemon in RBY. Its power and influence is such that it was featured at number 4 on False Swipe Gaming's list of the most broken Pokemon of all time in any generation. There is nothing that can truly wall it. When an opposing Pokemon is put to sleep and tries to burn those sleep turns, it must contend with Tauros coming in and firing off attacks for free. But why exactly is Tauros so unmatched in its danger level to the point of being the most valuable Pokemon on both players' teams? Well, it's one of the fastest Pokemon around. In terms of viable Pokemon, only Starmie, Alakazam, and Jolteon are faster than it. Alakazam and Jolteon are incredibly physically frail, so they certainly aren't switching into its moves. Starmie is bulky enough to withstand its attacks, but it hates potentially taking paralysis from Tauros' highly spammable Stab Body Slam. Tauros being this fast means that the Pokemon switching in will have to take 2 attacks. This is dangerous because Tauros isn't just attacking with Body Slam. It can follow a Body Slam with another powerful stab in Hyper Beam, which doesn't recharge in Generation 1 if it knocks out a Pokemon. Tauros also makes the most of RBY specific mechanic. Its high speed blesses it with an amazing critical hit rate of 21%. We complain right now about 4% crits. So when you switch into Tauros, you have to take 2 hits from it, the second of which is almost twice as strong as the initial one, and quite often is hitting you with double damage. What about dealing with the immense damage of Tauros with normal resist? Well, that's a nice thought, but it doesn't work so well in practice, as the game's best normal resists are Rhydon and Gengar. The former is blown away by Tauros' Blizzard, while the latter is shattered by Earthquake. But Tauros only has base 100 attack, you may say. Can you wall it with sheer bulk? That's a bit more practical. Pokemon like Rest Snorlax, Cloyster, and Slowbro attempt to do exactly this, and they are somewhat reliable, with Cloyster being the best of the bunch. However, a crit-happy Tauros can easily mess this up. The more it attacks, as it loves to do, the higher the chance that a devastating crit is going to come into play, especially crit Hyper Beams. And that's without the possibility of the paralysis inflicted by Body Slam kicking in on a crucial turn as Slowbro tries to rest, for example. This also is huge versus more offensive Pokemon Tauros faces off against, of course. Tauros is perhaps the purest embodiment of aggressively going for game-breaking odds to break on through the other side. Though of course, it is immensely dangerous based on its initial damage alone. Plus, if Cloyster gets too popular, Tauros dips into his move pool, pulls out Thunderbolt, which also helps quite a bit against Slowbro, and that's that. And contrary to the standard sets by later generations, Tauros is not a speedy wall breaker balanced out by its poor bulk. Thanks to the solid natural stats in RBY's maxed out EV system, it is disturbingly good at taking hits for something so fast and powerful. The most impressive example is the 84.6% chance it has to survive the strongest attack in the game, Snorlax's Stab Self-Destruct. Exeggutor's Explosion doesn't even come close. It ranges from 69% to 81% done to Tauros. Of course, it can take booms like this. Other physical attacks aren't nearly as threatening. Even the mighty Rhydon's Earthquake is a mere 3-hit KO. Tauros' special bulk isn't as incredible, but it can still get the job done. It's overwhelmingly favored to survive 2 Zapdos Thunderbolts or Alakazam Psychics, doing so 99.2% of the time. Tauros is so incredibly difficult to deal with that the result of many battles was determined by the most famous coin flip in competitive Pokemon history, the Tauros War. Slam, slam, beam goes the mantra. Though of course, this is complicated by crits that may or may not happen, and the prediction element of attempting to absorb Hyper Beam with another Pokemon, and so on. Another one of Tauros' favorite alternative moves was Fire Blast, specifically for the Tauros War. Fire Blast had a 30% chance to burn in Generation 1, and thus gave a Tauros packing it a slight edge on standard Tauros, which was quite literally the most important advantage you could possibly have. Tauros has been the best Pokemon in the first generation of OU for 2.5 decades. Whoever bull is more well trained has decided many a battle. Snorlax is also a physical attacker, making the most of its highly spammable normal stab, but it takes a quite different approach from Tauros' crit happy hit and run style. Whereas Tauros prefers to stay as healthy as possible until late game, Lax leverages its enormous bulk to withstand opposing hits while dishing out its own. The most important Pokemon it takes hits from? Tauros, of course, and Lax does so while remaining an incredible offensive threat itself, firing off its normal stab and body slams, and even self-destructs. While its abysmal speed means it lacks the bull's crit rate, it naturally hits harder than Tauros, brandishing a significantly higher base 110 attack. It also possesses the aforementioned single hardest hitting move in the game in its stab self-destruct. Lax further differentiates itself from Tauros through its cornucopia of possible movesets. It can attack the opponent in so many different ways. In addition to making the most of its bulk through rest and destroying pretty much the whole game with its normal stabs, it can become unbreakable physically with Reflect, which if you didn't know in Generation 1, Reflect is basically super armor. It lasts until you switch out. It can do the same on the special side with Amnesia, which is basically 2 Calm Minds at once in Generation 1, allowing Lax to become a prominent special threat. And it can use this offensively or defensively in tandem with Reflect. It can bounce back opposing physical attacks like Tauros' Body Slam by using Counter. It can play it simple and safe with Earthquake to Gengar, the Rock types, and Chansey for decent damage. It can even go for freezes against Pokemon like Chansey, Slowbro, or opposing Snorlax trying to stall it out with Ice Beam. There's really no way to be safe against Snorlax. Whether you try to out-offense it or even out-stall it, it's going to be able to beat your attempt to do so. It can mix and match its offensive assault to its liking. For example, if you assume its Reflect Rest set won't pack Self-Destruct because Rest and Boom seem counterintuitive, it'll be happy to let you think that until it surprises you and blows up your seemingly safe late-game Zapdos. Snorlax is always entangled on both sides in the back-and-forth dance of the RBY game. Even if it doesn't necessarily finish the battle, it helps you get to that endpoint more than anything else. Chansey is completely unlike the other 2 RBY normal types. It is completely uninterested in using its normal typing for the purpose of offensive stab moves. Rather, it combines normal's neutrality to all special attacks with comically high special bulk that shrugs off Mewtwo, let alone anything OU is going to throw at it. It is the only Pokemon in the game that can resist Psychic in metaphorical terms anyway, without actually being a Psychic type. It also possesses a move pool of incredible depth that lets it actively harass the opponent, rather than simply being a wall. The only one move it absolutely needs, of course, is Soft Boiled, whose reliable recovery is a huge part of what makes Chansey so unbreakable. Beyond that though, it can mix and match to its heart's desire. It has access to the big 3 status conditions in Paralysis, Freeze, and Sleep. It can bolster its lower physical defense with Reflect, making it nigh unkillable for many teams who are forced to enter an extended war of attrition against it, resorting to stalling it out because they're not going to be able to actually break through it. Alternatively, it can bounce back even the strongest normal attacks with Counter. This will Reflect in conjunction with its normal typing, meaning it cannot be paralyzed by Body Slam in Generation 1, makes Chansey surprisingly reliable at messing with Snorlax. In fact, one of the ways that Snorlax can actually beat Chansey is if it's paralyzed beforehand, otherwise it has a hard time. Chansey is also quite adept at actually dishing out direct damage, be it through the consistency of Seismic Toss, the super effective coverage of Ice Beam, sometimes paired with Thunderbolt. This means, like Snorlax, it can and does run an enormous number of different movesets, all of which are not just viable, but excellent. It can go for reliability with the standard Paralysis Spreading Reflect set. It can break games open with the so-called Triple KO set that packs all of Sing, Ice Beam, and Counter. Because remember, in Generation 1, Sleep's duration is incredibly long, and a Pokemon will not move on the turn it wakes, while a frozen Pokemon will stay frozen unless actively de-thawed by the opponent, meaning that it's effectively a KO. This is just the tip of the iceberg too. Like the other normal types, Chansey is not just always reliable, but one of the most important defining features of every single RBY game. on both sides. Whoever manages their Chansey better is likely to have a significant advantage over the opponent. So in conclusion, a big part of the magic of RBY is positioning, making the most out of the tools you have that are almost identical to your opponent's. Though of course there's also the Pokemon aspect of it, where the small tweaks you make to your own normal types, be it through moveset or in battle play, can go a long way. No matter what the details are though, Tauros, Snorlax, and Chansey will be there. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what dominant type in a metagame you'd like to see covered next. And of course, if you are new to the channel, like I said, subscribe. Thank you for getting this far in the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.